commenting on a Facebook post that I read. It's very good. Talks about everything for everyone. When I read this, I thought about collectivist societies, especially in the former Soviet Union, that met its demise because of communist ideologies which could not be effectively implemented in the real world. And in the real world, we know that individual enterprise validates everyone's activities and everyone's realness. And this kind of private enterprise reinforces one's will to be. So I was wondering if we're not endorsing communism, which somehow leads to some collective demise. Duane.
Well, Charles, I really don't quite understand what you're saying or asking. What, referring to communism?
Yeah, because one of the tenets of communism is everything for everyone. So, so which means that even the lazy, the unenterprising, will still have something. I mean, if they do nothing.
Well, you're defining that according to commercialism, not reality. That's not what I'm referring to. In other words, the idea everything for everyone. Everything is available for everyone, but when you bring it into a personal social understanding, I can see where that applies because the world controllers have used these ideas, employ people to get their agreement. And so, yeah, so whatever the Communist Manifesto is, I've never read it or, whatever. I grew up through these things where there was the United States and Russia, and there was this whole story of, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and there's Khrushchev and Kennedy as an example, and things are what they are according to what you see on TV. But again, it's funny that you kind of bring that up because we are limited by words here, very, very, very limited, and people use the same words and the same references, but this is where your insight, intuition, and recognizing your real awareness and how to recognize what I'm presenting. So yeah, you can personally take it any way at all, and just like many people look at what we're doing, and it's like a cult. Yeah, all of a sudden we're a cult. But when you see it on the real side, or what it really is, when you learn to see the real side and not just take for granted what your mind has created and come up through, well, then there's a whole new view, because it is a view. And then, yes, there is the challenge to understand what you're experiencing and what you're viewing. Yeah, I get it. But here in the physical, this is a tough place. And so this is where, when these things come up and somebody makes a comment, you decide, lots of times I just let it be. So what? People say this or that. There's a fellow that we taught before, and he's on his Facebook. He's all of a sudden, he's showing a picture of Ava and I and all the guides, etc. One of these images that Ava made, and saying that these are all basically saying these are all stupid idiots. And this is someone that, we were with for quite a while. And all of a sudden, anybody can say anything. So the idea of that is a real position with everything, because everything is possible for everyone. We have come up through nothing but, evil restrictions. Everything is restricted. Everything is poisoned. Planned to be poisoned, planned to be destroyed, plan to be controlled, it's ridiculous. And so just like the sky and the sun shining, it is all awareness. Everything is awareness. And so the opportunity for everyone is there, but they have to learn to recognize it. And so just because the words are the same, you can go through all of that through anything written that's ever been written. And, people say, well, this is the same as this is the same as that. And that's the definition. But what is the real reference according to what is said or written? That becomes the difference, and that's what you have to figure out. Or you don't, or you just go with your own mind, which many have, just like, again, using the Joni takeover corporation of what Paul did and what it is today, and all these people are agreeing to that. Well, it's their choice, but all they're seeing is a surface definition. They're not seeing the real side. They won't look to the real side because they don't want to see it. They want to pretend. So, yes, Charles, it's a heck of a challenge, but many of these things, I just let them go. Just like the fellow that I saw on his Facebook, he tried to friend me. Then I went over there and looked. And just for the heck of it, I looked and his silliness. And it's like, I blocked him. It's like, go away. I don't need this nonsense, but I didn't comment on anything. So, yeah, this becomes a little particular. And so we don't need to build issues around these things like the 6 o'clock news. These are best left alone. And I suggest just continue to focus on better understanding and setting things up in projects and new groups for people to better understand what we're doing. Yeah. And said, I wouldn't, if I were asked on a radio or TV program as an example, certain things like this, I wouldn't answer the questions. I remember Paul was on one, something like that, and he just got up and walked away. It's like, he ain't going to waste his time, because all of a sudden you start to build this issue. And this is what people want. They're looking for sensationalism, suspense, all kinds of stuff, or who did what. And we're not into that, because enough of that nonsense is going on with the destruction of this world as it is every single moment as we sit here. Place is burning. So, yeah, this is all silly stuff, Charles.
Okay, Duane, we know that belief, faith, and hope are what drive the religions. And this leads to some extreme enthusiasm, devotion, and even fanaticism. Now, the worldwide educators, new presentation, we don't subscribe to these tenets: faith, belief, and hope. But how do we ensure that new students or new friends or new followers don't slip into this state of mind? For instance, when people do not remember their dreams, they must just assume that they have them after all. And they must have the conviction that the real guides are with them without some demonstrable proof. Then perhaps firmly believe that they operate in the real universes, which remain somehow fuzzy to many, and also have what I call it faith and hope that at the end of this earthly life, they will not be coming back here, and will perhaps dwell permanently in the real universes. So I find that reinforced assumptions will automatically lead to belief, faith, and hope in something. So how is the new presentation and the worldwide educators not in this faith, belief, and hope trap?
Well, that's a biggie, Charles. Yes, it is. It's a challenge for everybody. And as I've, talked about these things, and I think I have another another reiteration of that coming up, simply because, you know, when it's applied with the personal self and how the personal self has been taught and indoctrinated and brought up, okay, these things applied, they, they are, they're self-limiting. But once they're seen from a real position, and this is not a put down of these things. When I describe these things, I'm just simply describing what is taking place, not saying, oh, gee, this is bad, don't do that, don't touch it. I don't say that. I don't say that with anything. Everything is okay. You know, it's a choice. See, we're into a position now to where people have to learn their choices. And here's the cool thing about those three, and that is that, and others like them, hope, faith, and belief. It's fine if people want that. That's their life. It's, again, it's not a put down. But when you start to recognize, truly recognize the isness, you know, it's like the air you breathe. You need to believe you're breathing. You see. So it's like that. Do you have faith that you're believing? Are you hope you're breathing? You see, to see again all these ideas that we've created. And by the very fact that people look to these ideas, all I'm saying is that fine, you can keep looking to them, but in the meantime, you could learn to recognize the isness life is, and you can do better and free yourself from just carrying ideas that only keep you locked in creation into this matrix. So it's a choice. So you want to use those things, or peace on earth, or love, and whatever. All these things are fine, and they have their place. But they are not, you might say, the ultimate. There are no absolutes in creation. There cannot be. And life is what it is. It's an isness to be recognized. It's not something that you can really consider. So if you want to add hope, faith, and belief to what life already is, and love and all these things, fine. That's personal experiences. But the reality of life is like the sun shining. You don't see any of that there. I've used that many times. And so again, people do struggle with this. It's very simple. But that's that point of your real awareness and your mind. Your mind is used of a particular, again, like your car. Unless the car is thinking for you. I don't know too many people or any that where they let their car think for them, but they do let their mind think for them. The mind is a storehouse, and what is considered while in the five bodies, that's your real awareness. And if that's what you want to consider as your reality, then so be it. It's all fine. I like this new position that I recognize simply because once you start bringing up restrictions like, oh, you can't do that or whatever, and you can't do this or whatever, and etc., the do's and the don'ts and all this, then you got to deal with it. And eventually you can have the mob at your door. Why did you say this? Why do you say we can't do this? You know, etc., whatever. So it becomes a heck of a challenge. And these three ideas, you can see they play a major role in the world because the world has been indoctrinated with them purposely. And you look at the birds and the animals, they don't use these ideas. Not at all. Not even close. They're just cool. You know, I like kitty cats and I see them. I never get impressions like that. Oh, gee, I believe this, or I hope this is coming, or, you know, whatever, you know. Maybe sometimes they may consider like, gee, I haven't eaten 2 days. I hope I find something. Well, that's, you know, that's of a particular. So you use that idea, but not as a reality that this, you know, connects you to some ultimate almighty being that controls everything, some authority. This is a relationship with some authority. If people want to decide that, but the new presentation has nothing to do with that. We're clean. You know, that's the idea. But people here everybody will create things. So you want to get better at it and to keep it clean, etc. So, but respectfully, this is where the Varden master said that he made a quote that, oh, Duane is a dream stealer. Well, yeah, it would seem like that. I'm stealing people's dreams, but what I'm actually doing is pointing out their restrictions when they're supposedly involved in a spiritual path that talks about real freedom or spiritual freedom of some kind, when actually it's not, because it's just another more restricting ideas to look to, and a master and a guru and an authority and a god and the old hue. So yeah, there's a lot to realize. And so on the physical level, you have the surface world, but on the real side, and it does take time. And there's a lot of deception, just like this young man that came up and shared. And I had talked to him in the past. I don't have an answer for that, but I remember years ago, Rebazar said, there are those that are disguising themselves. And so how do you get through this? You take the time to recognize your real awareness, and you will know what you don't need, you see. So again, many times people think they need healings, or they need this or that, or they need their third eye open or whatever. Do you? Well, your real awareness supersedes all that. You don't have any third eye in your real awareness. That's in the body forms. So what I've done is decided to surpass all that, because Paul went over it already. That was like high school. You went through the 12th grades with that. It's there. All the information is in the world. Now we're even beyond college. We're into the universal position of seeing and perceiving and being beyond all that. This is the idea, and it's very workable. It's so simple and it's very workable, but you really got to want to do it. But again, for the most part, those personal ideas, personal sensations, emotions, and whatever, they ain't going to leave you. But what comes first in your life? You are the decider. You decide what comes first and what is bigger than your personal self, or is your personal self bigger? So yes, it's a heck of a challenge. So because people won't take the time, and this becomes a position, a real position with the whole of life, that would seem that it cannot exist at all. And this is where the risk taker comes in. Will you take the risk to see something you cannot see, you cannot define, and it is invisible beyond invisible? That's your choice. That's your adventure. Or you stay with these ideas, and most people fall back and they just go back to the love, the faith, the family thing. I've seen it so many times. Fine. It's all okay. All of it is okay. You decide your adventure. Yes, Charles, thank you for asking.
Okay, another question, John. Then, uh, in some circles, and I think it is Judge Santayana who said this. He says, "Those who cannot remember their past are bound to repeat it." So, while focusing on the easiness of life, or will focusing on the easiness of life not lead to this situation where the new nowness shields one from the past? Or, and is it not a kind of artificial flight from maybe the iniquities of the past, the mishaps of the past, which stare us in the face and obviously impact our lives right now? Yeah.
Imagine yourself like in a gigantic library, like on the Astro, around the Astro Museum, whatever. And it's huge and it's tall and it's hundreds of feet high and hundreds of feet wide. And all you see on the sides of the wall and all the way up and everywhere is books. All you see is books, rows and rows of books, more so than any lawyer's office. Well, let's just say all those books are stories from your past lives. All right. And so, the books are sitting on the shelf. And unless they attack you, all right, they won't. So, yes, the idea that affecting by from the past, yes, that's because of the individual being unaware. You're not aware of what is affecting you, but as you focus on becoming more aware to a position where you can see all of it, then you see it for what it is. That's the best part. So it makes sense. It's always made sense to me to focus on the isness and from there see it all, instead of trying to figure it out from a limited position where you're still the effect of everything and having to deal with it and, confusion yourself, you see? So you decide. Again, that's the biggie, to see something that you cannot see. And you know what's so cool about it is that when these things come up, all of a sudden you do see what they are. And it doesn't matter if they're from the past, because it's all now. There is no past. Again, this is a made-up reference, like relationships, father, son, mother, brother. These are made-up things. We're all being to being, and as we stand real with that position, hey, all of a sudden we see what's going on from a real position. But again, people want to play the emotional, personal role. That's fine. You can go back and forth and play that. I have fun with it too. But realistically, like Paul called his book, "In My Soul I Am Free." All right. So again, that's where he resided. He resided in his real awareness and dealt with creation accordingly. And then creation actually becomes more fun because you're not limited in the effect of it in your real awareness. That's the best part. But you still have to deal with the considerations and the limited view of and the unawareness of others. Well, that's just how it is. And so we present what we can here. So yeah, uh, that's the idea. When the individual is unaware, yeah, the past will haunt a person, and they won't know what it is because they've been involved in certain things and they've made agreements in the past, and those agreements are still there. And so, each person is a little bit different, and we've all been into so many things, but it just depends upon how you want to face it and learn to see what it is. Yeah, sometimes more than figuring it out, but just learn to see what it is and facing it. And it's kind of like a bully at school, keeps bothering you, but as you just stand up and face it, sometimes they just go away and they're gone. You see, because you stood up and it was okay. So, but not all the time. Again, it's the physical realm. This is the surface world. But the best part is with your real awareness, because you can eventually supersede all of this, because everything here is temporary. It comes and goes. And yeah, for the longest time, you have to deal with it like we're dealing with the world now. But again, standing in the big library, hey, the books aren't going to attack you, are they? Those are old stories, but they're in the present. They're in the here and now. And the past, again, this is an idea that people conjure up. And just like the religions have created the guilt trip of the original sin, and created confessions around that and other rituals and whatever, etc., to hold people to something that doesn't need to bother them, but they feel obligated that it should. No one has to feel obligated to anything, to do anything. Each person decides their life. So, yeah, that is a biggie here, Charles, because of how the surface world is and how distorted things are and how people have been raised through this distorted educational systems and everything else. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that you decide how to recognize this. And if you want to become involved, that's your choice. But, as you become more aware, you start to recognize these things. It's really cool. I remember 30, 40 years ago, I was in a tax program, and just by going through it for a few months, all of a sudden, I recognized how it just like opened up for me. I didn't have to really read books or anything. I heard some people talk, and all of a sudden, I recognized how the monetary system of this world works. And it's not the fronts that you see out there with the banks that you drive down the street and see. That's not it at all, not even close. Those are the fronts, but I could see it. And I tried to tell others, and they didn't understand. but I could see it. Just like in the movie The Shadow, where he saw the building there, but no one else could see it. He goes, I can see it. And so this is the best part of what is presented here. You know, Paul started off, his idea was to show people that they were more than a physical body. We can't just stay there. We can't just stay with the baby steps, because then eventually people follow that. That's the idea. They want to be followers, etc. This is where we are all free beings of real light already and simply recognize a real position. But again, the personal life holds sway because we created this little self, and it's a toughie to deal with. I have a little self too. I have a personal self, and I have to deal with it. And it's very restricting and limiting. No matter what you can think, you aren't free of it because you have to deal with it. Just like your rent or your house payment. Yeah, you're here, you got to pay rent. You got to pay taxes. You got to do whatever. That's part of the earth. But it's not a real lifestyle. It's just something you do here. So the past is the same. Those are books on the shelf, Charles. That's all they are. And if you think they're alive and they're going to get you, well, let's see what happens.